Hey crowd, hi. So we read the Chronicles of Narnia,
Yes, just one.
A Horse and His Boy, Chapter 2. Do you want to be in here, Jesselyn?
Yes.
Okay, you stand over there. Yeah, you can stand or sit over here. Do you want me to read to you?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try again. So I start all over again, right?
Yeah.
It was nearly noon on the following day when Shasta was wakened by something warm and soft moving over his face. I think it was a horse nose. He opened his eyes and found himself staring into the long face of a horse. Its nose and lips were almost touching his. He remembered the exciting events of the previous night and sat up. But as he did, he groaned. Why do you think he groaned?
Because he was
Sore. He was really sore. Yeah. Oh, Bree, gasped, I'm so sore all over. I can hardly move. Good morning, small one, said Bree. I was afraid you might feel a bit stiff. It can't be the falls. You didn't have more than a dozen or so, and it was all lovely, soft, springy turf that must have been almost a pleasure to fall on. And the only one that might have been a nasty was broken by that gorse bush. No, it's the riding itself that comes hard at first. What about breakfast? I've had mine. Oh, bother breakfast, bother everything, said Shasta. I tell you, I can't move. But the horse nuzzled at him with his nose and pawed him gently with a hoof till he had to get up. And then he looked about him and saw where they were. Behind them lay a little copse, and before them the turf, dotted with white flowers, sloped down to the brow of a cliff, far below them, so that the sound of the breaking waves was very faint. And that lay the sea. Shasta had never seen it from such a great height, and had never seen so much of it before, nor dreamed how many colors it had. On either hand, the coast stretched away, headland after headland, and at the points you could see the white foam running up the rocks, but making no noise because it was so far off. There were gulls flying overhead, and the heat shivered on the ground. It was a blazing hot day. But what Shasta chiefly noticed was the air. He couldn't think what was missing until at last he realized there was no smell of fish in it. For, of course, neither in the cottage nor among the nets had he ever been so far away from that smell in his whole life. And this new air was so delicious, and all his old life seemed so far away, that he forgot for a moment about his bruises and his aching muscles and said, I say, Bree, didn't you say something about breakfast? Yes, I did, answered Bree. I think you'll find something in the saddlebags. They're over there on that tree where you hung them up last night, or early this morning, rather. They investigated the saddlebags, and the results were cheering. A meat pasty, only slightly stale, a lump of dried figs, and another lump of green cheese. You guys want some green cheese?
No.
A little flask of wine, and some money, about 40 crescents in all, which was more than Shasta had ever seen. And while Shasta sat down painfully and cautiously with his back against a tree and started on the pasty, Bree had a few more mouthfuls of grass to keep him company. Won't it be stealing to use the money, said Shasta. No, said Bree, looking up with a mouthful of grass. I never thought of that. A free horse and a talking horse mustn't steal, of course. But I think it's all right. We're prisoners and captives in enemy country. That money is booty. It's spoil. You guys know what booty and spoil is?
No.
It's like what you get if you've been in a war. If you get in a war and you've taken something, then it's yours. Sort of like that. Besides, how are we to get any food for you without it? I suppose, like all humans, you won't eat natural food like grass and oats. Would you like to eat grass?
No, but I would eat grass
You might eat
before. It
oats?
tastes kind of, it tastes like apple.
Yeah, but you wouldn't want to eat very much, probably, would you? Not like a whole stomach full of it. Whoa, I can't. Ever tried? Yes, I have. I can't get it down at all. You couldn't either if you were me. You're rum little creatures, you humans, remarked Bree. And when Shasta had finished his breakfast, which was by far the nicest he had ever eaten, Bree said, I think I'll have a nice roll before we put on that saddle again. And he proceeded to do so. So what's a roll? What's a roll, kids? What's a roll? What is it?
I think it's like when you roll something up.
Yeah, but the horse is rolling himself. Horses roll on their back. You didn't know that, did you? So he's having a roll, okay?
Well, he's having a...
The horse is having a roll because he's like having a back scratch. Kind of like having a
Good
back.
time.
A good time, yep. It's most refreshing, he said. But Shasta burst out laughing and said, "You do look funny when you're on your back." "I look nothing of the sort," said Bree, and then suddenly he rolled around on his side, raised his head, and looked hard at Shasta, blowing a little. "Does it really look funny?" he asked in an anxious voice. "Yes, it does," replied Shasta, "but what does it matter?" "You don't think, do you," said Bree, "that it might be a thing talking horses never do? A silly, clownish trick I've learned from the dumb ones? It would be dreadful to find when I got back to Narnia that I picked up a lot of low, bad habits." "What do you think, Shasta? Honestly now, don't spare my feelings. Do you think that real free horses, the talking kind, roll?" "How should I know, anyway? I don't think it would be a bother about it if I were you. We've got to get there first. Do you know the way?" "I know the way to Tashbaan. After that comes the desert." "Oh, we'll manage the desert somehow, never fear. Why, we'll be in sight of the northern mountains then. Think of it. To Narnia and the north. Nothing will stop us then. But I'd be glad to be past Tashbaan. You and I are safer away from cities. Can't we avoid it?" "Not without going a long way inland, and that would take us into cultivated lands and main roads, and I wouldn't know the way. No, we'll just have to creep along the coast. Up here on the downs we'll meet nothing but sheep and rabbits and gulls and a few shepherds. And by the way, what about starting?" Shasta's legs ached terribly as he saddled Bree and climbed into the saddle, but the horse was kindly to him and went off at a soft pace all afternoon. When evening twilight came, they dropped by steep tracks into a valley and found a village. Before they got into it, Shasta dismounted and entered it on foot to buy a loaf of bread and some onions and radishes, so he could have something to eat, right? The horse rotted around by the fields in the dusk and met Shasta on the far side. This became the regular plan every other night. These were great days for Shasta, for every day better than the last, and his muscles hardened and he fell less often. Even at the end of the training, Bree still had said he felt like a bag of flour in the saddle. What, Ellie?
Who's Rasta?
Shasta? Shasta's the boy.
Oh.
That's his name. Yeah.
Oh, I thought Shasta was the horse. Was the horse?
Bree is the horse. Bree is the horse and Shasta is the boy. All right. "And even if it was safe, young'un, I'd be ashamed to be seen with you on the main road." But in spite of his rude words, Bree was a patient teacher. No one can teach riding so well as a horse. Shasta learned to trot, to canter, to jump, and to keep his seat even when Bree pulled up suddenly or swung unexpectedly to the left or the right, which, as Bree told him, was a thing you might have to do in any moment in a battle. And then, of course, Shasta begged to be told of the battles and the wars in which Bree had carried the Tarkan. And Bree would tell of forced marches and the fording of swift rivers, of charges, and would tell of forced marches, of charges, and of fierce fights between the cavalry and cavalry when the war horses fought, as well as the men, being all fierce stallions trained to bite and kick. Who would like to be bitten and kicked by a horse?
Yeah.
Not me either. And to rear at the right moment so that the horse's weight as well as the rider's would come down on the enemy's crest on the stroke of a sword or a battle axe. But Bree did not want to talk about wars as often as Shasta wanted to hear about them. "Don't speak of them, youngster," he would say. "There were only the Tisrocs wars, and I fought in them as a slave and a dumb beast. Give me the Narnian wars where I shall fight as a free horse among my own people. Those will be wars worth talking about. Narnia and the North. Braha, boo-hoo," he says. All right, Shasta soon learned, when he heard Bree talking like that, to prepare for a gallop. After that, they had traveled on for weeks and weeks, past more bays and headlands and rivers and villages than Shasta could remember. There came a moonlit night when they started their journey at evening, having slept during the day. They had left the downs behind them and were crossing a wide plain with a forest about a half a mile away on their left. The sea, hidden by low sandhills, was about the same distance on their right. They had jogged along for about an hour, sometimes trotting and sometimes walking, when Bree suddenly stopped. "What's up?" said Shasta. "Shh," said Bree, craning his neck round and twitching his ears. "Did you hear something? Listen." "It sounds like another horse between us in the wood," said Shasta, after he had listened for about a minute. "It is another horse," said Bree, "and that's what I don't like. Isn't it probably just a farmer riding home late, said Shasta with a yawn. Don't tell me, said Bree, that's not a farmer's riding, nor a farmer's horse either. Can't you tell by the sound? That's quality. That horse is, and it's being ridden by a real horseman. I'll tell you what it is, Shasta, there is a Tarkin under the edge of that wood. Not on his war horse, it's too light for that. On a fine blood mare, I should say.
What's a blood mare?
That's a female horse. A girl horse is called a mare. And a blood means that it's really a good one. That's what it means. Well, it stopped now, whatever it is, said Shasta. You're right, said Bree, and why should he stop just when we do? Shasta, my boy, I do believe there is someone following us. What shall we do, said Shasta in a lower whisper than before. Do you think he can see us as well as hear us? Not in this light, so long as we stay quite still, answered Bree, but look, there's a cloud coming up. I'll wait till that gets over the moon, then we'll go get off on our right as quietly as we can down to the shore. We can hide among the sandhills if the worst comes to the worst. They waited till the cloud covered the moon, and then first at a walking pace and afterwards at a gentle trot made for the shore. The cloud was bigger and thicker than it had looked at first, and soon the night grew very, very dark. Just as Shasta was saying to himself, we must be nearly at those sandhills by now, his heart leaped into his mouth because an appalling noise had suddenly risen up out from the darkness ahead, a long, snarling roar, melancholy and utterly savage. Instantly, Bree swerved around and began galloping inland as fast as he could gallop. What is it? Gasped Shasta. Lions, said Bree. Without checking his pace and turning his head. And after that there was nothing but a sheer galloping for some time. At last they splashed across a wide, shallow stream, and Bree came to a stop on the far side. Shasta noticed that he was trembling and sweating all over. That water may have thrown the brute off our scent, panted Bree, when he had partly got his breath back. We can walk for a bit now. As they walked, Bree said, Shasta, I'm ashamed of myself. I am just as frightened as a common dumb Calormene horse. I am really. I don't feel like a talking horse at all. I don't mind swords and lances and arrows, but I can't bear those creatures. I think I'll trot for a bit. So is he afraid of the lion?
No.
I think he is. Bree is really afraid of the lion, actually.
But Shasta does not.
Yeah, now Shasta's not too afraid because Shasta doesn't even know to be afraid, right? Okay, about a minute later, however, he broke into a gallop again, and no wonder, for the roar broke out again, this time on their left from the direction of the forest. Two of them, moaned Bree. When they had galloped for several minutes without any further noise from the lion, Shasta said, I say, that other horse is galloping beside us now, only a stone's throw away. All the better, said Bree. Tarkin on it will have a sword, protect all of us. But Bree, said Shasta, we might just as well be killed by lions or caught, or I might. They'll hang me for horse stealing. He was feeling less frightened of lions than Bree because he had never met a lion, but Bree had. Bree only snorted in answer, but he did sheer away to his right. Oddly enough, the other horse seemed to also be shearing away to the left, so that in a few seconds the space between them had widened a good deal. But as soon as it did so, there came two more lion roars immediately after another, one on the right and the other on the left, and the horses began drawing nearer together, so apparently did the lions. The roaring of the brutes on each side was horribly close, and they seemed to be keeping up with the galloping horses quite easily. Then the cloud rolled away. The moonlight, astonishingly bright, showed up everything almost as if it were broad day. The two horses and the two riders were galloping almost neck and neck and knee to knee, just as if they were in a race. Indeed, Bree and afterwards, that a finer race had never been seen in Calormen. Shasta now gave himself up for lost and began to wonder whether lions killed you quickly or played with you as a cat plays with a mouse, and how much it would hurt. At the same time, one sometimes does this at the most frightful moments, he noticed everything. He saw that the other rider was a very small, slender person, mail-clad. The moon shone on the mail and was riding magnificently, and he had no beard. Something flat and shining was spread out before them. Before Shasta had time even to guess what it was, there was a great splash, and he found his mouth half full of salt water. The shining thing had been a long inlet of the sea. Both horses were swimming, and the water was up to Shasta's knees. There was an angry roaring behind them, and looking back, Shasta saw a great, shaggy, and terrible shape crouched on the water's edge, but only one. We must have shaken off the other lion, he said. The lion apparently did not think its prey worth a wetting, or at any rate, it made no attempt to take to the water in pursuit. The two horses, side by side, were now well out to the middle of the creek, and the opposite shore could be clearly seen. The Tarkan had not spoken a word, but he will, thought Shasta, as soon as we have landed. What am I to say? I must be thinking out of a story. So he needs to think up a story to tell the other Tarkan, right?
What's a Tarkan?
The Tarkan is the other person, right? They think a Tarkan is like a lord or
What's a lord?
a lord is like a very special person, the most important people in the town. Might be lords, for instance.
There must be God.
Not God, no. They're just the people who are lords, right? At any rate. Anyway, then suddenly 2 voices spoke at his side. "Oh, I am so tired," said the one. "Hold your tongue, Wen, and don't be a fool," said the other. "I'm dreaming," thought Shasta. "I could have sworn that other horse spoke." Soon the horses were no longer swimming, but walking, and soon with a great sound of water running off their sides and tails, and with a great crunching of pebbles under their 8 hoofs, they came out on the farther side of the inlet. The Tarkan, to Shasta's surprise, showed no wish to ask questions. He did not even look at Shasta, but seemed anxious to urge his horse straight on. But Bree, however, at once shouldered himself to the other horse's way. "Boo-hoo-ha," he snorted. "Steady there. I heard you, I did. There's no good pretending, ma'am. I heard you. You are a talking horse." Another talking horse. A Narnian horse, just like me. "What's it got to do with you if she is?" said the strange rider fiercely, laying a hand on his sword hilt. But the voice in which the words were spoken had already told Shasta something. "Why, it's only a girl," he exclaimed. So it's a girl horse and a girl, right?
So that's 2 girls, 2 girls.
2 girls and 2 boys, right? Yep.
Then it can't be both the same.
So you have a girl and a girl horse, and a boy horse, right?
How can
And
you?
what-
Boy Narnia horse.
Yep, and they're both Narnia horses, and they both talk, right?
Yeah.
All right. "And what business of it be yours if I am only a girl?" snapped the stranger. "You're only a boy, a rude, common little boy, a slave probably, who's stolen his master's horse." "That's all you know," said Shasta. "He's not a thief, little Tarkina," said Bree. "At least, if there's been any stealing, you might as well say I stole him. But as for its not being my business, you wouldn't expect me to pass a lady of my own race in this strange country without speaking to her. It's only natural I should." "I think it's very natural too," said the horse. "I wish you'd held your tongue, Wen," said the girl. "Look at the trouble you've gotten us into." "I don't know about trouble," said Shasta. You can clear off as soon as you like. We shan't keep you." "No, you shan't," said the girl. "What quarrelsome creatures humans are," said Bree to the mare. "They're as bad as mules."
What's a mule?
You would know. You would ask.
It's a
Anybody?
different type of horse.
It's a different kind of horse.
Oh, it's like, I think I know what
They
a
got
mule
big
is.
ears.
So like it's a...
It's a cross between a horse and a donkey. Is what it is.
Oh, so like when a horse and a donkey are married and they have a baby. It's
They have a mule. That's right. Yep. "Too true, sir," said the mare, and with a sudden melancholy whinny. "And now perhaps escape?" "Tell him to mind his own business, Wen," said the girl. "No, I won't, Aravis," said the mare, putting her ears back. "This is my escape just as much as yours, and I'm sure a noble war horse like this is not going to betray us. We are trying to escape, to get to Narnia." "And so, of course, are we," said Bree. "Of course you guessed that at once. A little boy in rags riding or trying to ride a war horse at dead of night couldn't mean anything but an escape of some sort. And, if I may say so, a high-born Tarkina riding alone at night, dressed up in her brother's armor and very anxious for anyone to mind their own business and to ask no questions. Well, if that's not fishy, call me a cob." A corn cob. They call me a corn cob, anyway.
That's silly.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah. "All right then," said Aravis. "You guessed it. Wen and I are running away." We are trying to get to Narnia, and now, what about it? Why, in that case, there's what's to prevent us all going together, said Bree. I trust, Madam Wynne, you will accept such assistance and protection as I may be able to give you on your journey. Why do you keep talking to my horse instead of to me? Asked the girl. Excuse me, Tarkina, said Bree, with just the slightest backward tilt of his ears, but that's Calormene talk. We are free Narnians, Wynne and I suppose if you're running away to Narnia, you might be the one too. In that case, Wynne isn't your horse any longer. One might just as well say you're her human. Remember the horse and his boy?
Yeah.
That's the trick, right? The girl opened her mouth to speak and then she stopped. Obviously, she had not quite seen it in that light before. Still, she said, after a moment's pause, I don't know that there's so much point in all going together. Aren't we more likely to be noticed? Less, said Bree, and the mayor said, oh, let's do. I should feel much more comfortable. We're not even certain of the way. I'm sure a great charger like this knows far more than we do. Oh, come on, Bree, said Shasta. Let them go their own way. Can't you see they don't want us? We do, said Wynne. Look here, said the girl. I don't mind going with you, Mr. Warhorse. But what about this boy? How do I know he's not a spy? Why don't you say at once that you think I'm not good enough for you, said Shasta. Be quiet, Shasta, said Bree. The Tarkina's question is quite reasonable. I'll vouch for the boy, Tarkina. He's been true to me and a good friend, and he's certainly either a Narnian or an Arkenlander. All right then, let's go together. But she didn't say anything to Shasta, and it was obvious that she wanted Bree, but not him. Splendid, said Bree. Now that we've got the water between us and those dreadful animals, what about you two humans taking off your saddles and after all having a rest and hearing one another's stories? Both the children unsaddled their horses, and the horses and ate a little grass, and Erebus produced rather nice things to eat from her saddlebag. But Shasta sulked and said no thanks, that he wasn't hungry, and he tried to put it on that he thought on what he thought were very grand and stiff manners. But as a fisherman's hut is not usually a good place for learning grand manners, the results were dreadful. And he half knew that it wasn't a success, and he then became sulkier and more awkward than ever. Meanwhile, the two horses were getting on splendidly.
Hi, everybody.
Wow, that's noisy. What is that?
Random phone.
They remembered the very same places in Narnia, the grasslands up above Beaver's Dam, and found that there were some sort of second cousins once removed. This made things more and more uncomfortable for the humans until at last Bree said, and now Tarkina, tell us your story, and don't hurry it. I'm feeling comfortable now. Well, that's noisy, isn't it? So bring that here. Just bring it here.
Okay.
Can you bring it here? Let's see if we can't shut it off.
Isn't that Cam?
There you go. There you go.
There we go.
Now we got it shut off.
Is this all that we read?
You've read this much. And we got this much more to go.
Okay.
Okay, but we got to finish. Everybody, let's finish this story. All right.
Okay.
All right. Now the horses are getting along pretty good. Aravis immediately began sitting quite still and using a rather different tone and style from her usual one. For in Calormene, storytelling, whether the stories are true or made up, is a thing you're taught, just as English boys and girls are taught essay writing. The difference is that people want to hear the stories, whereas I never heard of anyone who wanted to read the essays.
What's our essays?
Essays are like book reports.
Yep. I know what an essay is.
Chocolate
Chocolate
Okay, would you go shut that off for me, please?
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.
Why do I smell a sucker? Probably because somebody had one.
Did you shut it off?
Bye-bye.